Thank you for purchasing your Clam Voyager XT. Today what we're going to cover is the parts and the assembly process that takes to put this house together. So let's dive right in. All right, so we've got everything out of the box. We've got everything sitting in front of us. Let's go through the parts and pieces that are inside this house. So first things first, we got our backs for our seats. Next thing we're gonna have is our bottoms for our seats. These are our cushions. You'll get two of them with, just like you'll get with the seats itself. Next thing we're gonna be pulling out is the rail support. All right, and then after that, we've got our rope. We've got our spreader pole kit. We have got our 2 deluxe seats. All right, we're gonna have our tent. Now remember that in these tents, if your house does come with a hammock, they are going to be inside the tent. As you can see, they are sitting right behind the piece of paper. Also, there will be an orange sticker that indicates that you have hammocks inside this tent, so make sure to look for it. After that, we got the U-channel. And then last but not least, we have the guts of the whole project, and this is the inner pack. This is gonna have all the parts that you're gonna need to assemble your house. And then after that, we've got our poles. So we've got our hoop poles. First one is going to be our extension pole. This is going to be a very important pole, and what you will notice here is the lime green zip tie that's tied onto this. This is going to indicate that this is your extension pole, and then after that you will have 3 regular hoop poles that we'll use in this process. So do not cut this green zip tie until you are ready to put this on. We got our inner pack sitting in front of us. We're going to open it up and see the parts that are inside. There we go. There is the bones of the entire project here. So, got a list of parts in here. I know it looks like a lot, but it's not much when you get going here. So first, we've got our hardware kit. This is gonna be all the nuts and bolts and screws that you're gonna need for this fish house. Also, your Allen wrench is inside of this package as well. So just remember that when you're pulling it apart. Okay, next thing we'll have here is slide blocks. We've got a set of 4 circular slide blocks and 4 oval slide blocks. You're going to want to pay close attention when we're working on the seats to see where these line up with each other on the assembly. Next, we've got our channels, our aluminum channels. These are going to be important and part of the seat too. You should have 4 of them total, so it'll be 2 per seat. All right, and then our front retainer brackets. We're going to need those. Our cap, our tube plugs, our rear retainer seats. There should be 2 of them. And we will have 4 of our seat rails. This will be 2 for each seat. 2 seat swivels. That will complete everything we need for the seats themselves. So now we're gonna have our package of RPSX collars. They look a little something like this. We are gonna have 2 bent porch poles. We are going to have 4 straight canopy poles, 2 extension poles, our extension or collars, 2 pole mounting brackets, 2 rail support brackets, and our rear support plugs. That's everything inside this. Let's get on with the seats. Now we can start with the seat assembly. This seat assembly will be the same assembly for a variety of our fish houses, which I have listed up here in the corner. And from there, we'll get started and get to step 1. All right, so now that we got everything set out, let's get started with the seat assembly process. The tools that we're gonna want for this are a rubber mallet, a 3/8 inch wrench or socket, a 7/16 wrench or socket, some type of a pliers, a Allen wrench, which the Allen wrench will be included within the hardware kit. Otherwise, you can use a T-handle, and that size is going to be a 5/32. Okay, and then what we will want from there is some type of a silicone spray. You can do this if you would like. What it'll do is it'll allow the seats to slide even smoother than they do. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the tube seat rails and the tube plugs in together. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can take it, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to line up the holes in the tube plug with the holes on the tube rail. So I like to line them up, and one thing you can do is give them a push, or if you would like to use a rubber mallet, I like to just get those somewhat close to each other where they're close. Take this and pound it into place. Now we're going to do this for all 4 of them. So a little tip for you, once you get your tube plug into your rail, sometimes they're not always going to line up perfectly, okay? So what I like to do is take the Allen wrench from your hardware kit and go on the inside and just simply turn it to straighten it out. That way, everything will be in line how you need it to be when you assemble. All right, so next process is the extrusion channels. You will have slide blocks. You'll have one that is oval, and you'll have one that is circular. Now, when assembling this, you will want to make sure that you have one circular and one oval slide block on each one of these extrusion channels. So what we'll do is, you'll see a T that is notched in there, and you will line that up with the T on the extrusion channel and simply put, slide it in. Okay, and now we will repeat the process on this side. Now, to note, when we put these together, you will want to make sure that your other extrusion channel lines up with this side. And the reason behind that is it gives a little bit of room for error if it's not perfectly straightened and aligned, and it'll also help the seat slide much better. Now that we have the slide blocks attached, now it's time to screw them on. So we're going to take our 101 147s, take 4 of these, and you'll notice these are a screw. So this is going to be the only screws that come in with your hardware kit. Now note, when you look at your slide blocks, you'll notice on this side you'll have one side that is a smaller hole and one side that's a bigger hole. We are going to want to take the screw and put that through the bigger hole. Now also, you're not going to put your screws in on each side. If you notice, this side has the smaller hole, this one has the bigger. Now I'm going to flip around, and now your circular slide block has the bigger hole on this side, and we are going to attach it there, like so. And what you'll do is you will screw these in, and once these are screwed in to both, we can move on to the next step. So for the seat assembly, we are going to build one seat for you, but this will be the same process that you repeat for the second seat that's in your fish trap. For the next start of the seat assembly process, we've got our channels and our slide blocks connected. Now we're going to take our swivel. And what you want to do with the swivel is you want to turn it into a star formation. So we're going to take it with our hands and just turn it until it looks like so. Then what we're going to do after that point is we're going to take our 106 286 Allen bolts and our 106 284 nuts and attach our channels to the swivel. So what I like to do with this process is flip it over, your channel is gonna sit underneath. So when you think about this, everything's gonna be flipped upside down. We're gonna take our screw, or our bolt, and we're gonna add it in there. And what I like to do is, I don't like to do it all as fast as I can, but we're just gonna get it at this point. We're not gonna tighten anything down. We're just going to get the bolt and nut attached. And now what we're gonna do from there is we're gonna repeat our process all the way around. Now that we have them all attached, everything is still loose. We're gonna once again double check to make sure we have everything assembled properly before we tighten down. You're gonna wanna make sure your ovals and your circular slide blocks are parallel with each other. Okay, so when you flip this over, it will look a little something like this. And from now that process, now that we know that we have everything set to where it's supposed to be, we can tighten down everything and move on to our next step. So once we have our base set up for our seat assembly, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna attach the deluxe seat. So you're gonna grab one of your deluxe seats, we're gonna flip it over, and we are gonna take our 101-470 and attach the swivel to the seat. Now, you still have it in that star formation, like I showed earlier, and now what we're gonna simply do is line the holes up with the holes in the swivel. Okay, from there the process is pretty simple. You're gonna want your 3/8 inch wrench or socket for this next process, and all we're gonna simply do is put them in. Now what I like to do first is I like to hand tighten every single one of these in, and the reason I do that is because you know that you have it set where you want it, because when you put one in, this has some room to move. Now it doesn't really matter if it moves a little bit on you, that's not going to be the end of the world, but I just like to do this process because then I know I have it set where I want it. So real quick, we'll add the other 4, or the other 2. I'll just hand tighten those in real quick, okay? And then I will use my socket for this process. Like I said, you can use a wrench or a socket, it does not matter, to get this part done. And now you will go into your star formation with it. Now, you don't need to go really tight on this, you just need to get it snug. So like so, like so. Now what I'll do is I'll spin it, and now finish the process. From there, our swivel, our base is now attached to the seat, and we can move on to the next part. So now that we've got the seat, we've got everything on it, we're gonna move to the seat rail tubes. Now, quick tip for you, when these go in, they go in just fine. But sometimes, you know, they can be kind of hard to move. They slide very freely, but if you wanna get a little bit more out of your tubes and your sliding, what we like to use is some type of a silicone spray. And what I will simply do is I will take myself a rag, it doesn't matter if it's a paper towel, whatever you have at home, just spray a little bit, just enough to get it wet. And then what we're gonna do is, we're just gonna quickly spin this and make sure that we get that silicone spray on all of them. From that point, this becomes very slick. So as you can see there, that runs pretty darn free through there. That's just a real quick tip if you wanna get a little bit more added sliding capabilities out of your seat system. So now that we have our tubes inside of our slide blocks, we're gonna now work on our front and rear retainer brackets. So here is your front retainer bracket. It doesn't matter on which side you start on with one of these because it all moves in the end so you can get it where you want it to go. But what we're gonna look for on this retainer bracket is you're gonna have one side that just has a hole drilled just for the size of the bolt itself. Then you're gonna have another side that actually has an oversized hole that leads into the same exact hole that we saw on the other side. You're gonna want this to be facing up for you in this process. So what we're gonna simply do is, we're gonna take these 2 holes, we're gonna line them up with the tube, we're gonna slide them on, and what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna line up the holes on the tube with the retainer bracket. Okay, so now once that's set, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our hammocks that we pulled out of our tent bag and our 106-456 bolts. You're gonna want 4 of these, okay? And we're gonna attach this all. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these bolts and I'm going to slide them in. Okay, sometimes they may go in a little snug. That's not a bad thing at all. So it'll keep everything in place while you're working through this process. So got those two in. Okay, now we're going to take our hammock and we're going to attach it. Noted this here, when you put the hammock on, you want to make sure that this strap right here faces down on the slide blocks. If you notice here, you have one side with the strap and one side without. When the hammock sits under this thing, it's going to look exactly like this. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it from looking like this and I'm going to flip it over on top of it. Okay, so now from there, we've got 4 corners with holes, okay? So we're going to take this, slide it through the notch, get it over the top of that bolt, okay? And then from that point on, now we can take our nut and tighten it on the top. Something I like to use is like a magnetic socket if you have one at home. It makes it very easy if you've got fat fingers like me. Otherwise, we'll show you both processes of how you can do this. So what I'll simply do is I'll just take that magnetic socket there, okay, and I will attach the nut inside of there. And what that's going to allow me to do is go through that top hole and just get it tightened down onto it. Now you don't need to go crazy. All we're doing at this point is just getting it on. We're just getting it snug. So now that side's done. And say you do not have something like this handy, you can just take your fingers and we'll make sure we do the same process right here as we did. Slide this through. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll take my fingers and I'll go underneath. Okay, do the best I can. I'll actually take my thumb, go into the insert hole up here to kind of keep it straight, and I'll just slowly just get it snug. Okay, now that was pretty simple. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna repeat the same step on the other side with a different, which is gonna be our rear retaining bracket. Now here's our rear retaining bracket. You can notice it's much different from the front retainer bracket, but one little quick tip to know which one is which is your clamp right here. So you will have that on here, and what this will do is this will connect your seat system to the seat rail of the fish house. So now what we're gonna do is we have our top side, okay, and then we have our bottom side. What I'm gonna want is I'm gonna want this bottom side right here, and that's how it's gonna go on. So we're gonna do the same process as in front. So I'm gonna line up these holes like so. So it will sit like that. We're gonna take our 2 Allen bolts, slide those in, like so. Now what we're gonna wanna do for this process is we will wanna grab some type of a pliers. A needle nose pliers I think works the best for this. And what it is these hammocks are meant to be tight on the bottom and they're not meant to be very loose. So sometimes you can just take your normal hand and you can stretch it enough where it will just slide right over the top of there like so. But other times, sometimes they may be a little bit tighter, so that's when this will come into hand. And what I'll do is simply take it, I will just grab onto the end of it, okay, and just pull. And it doesn't take much effort. So now that that's done, I can just take my 2 nuts and lightly tighten them on. Okay, now what we'll simply do after that, now that we have the assembly all put together how it should be, now we're going to tighten everything down. A little way of how I like to do it is I like to take the seat system, flip it over. What I'll actually do is I will push it as far forward as I can, and I will actually hang this off the edge of a table. Now what this is going to allow for me to do is it's just going to make things a lot easier. I like to use a impact if I can, but you can also use your Allen pieces as well. With the Allen wrench, or if you do have a T-handle style, remember this is a 5/32, you can use that as well and make the process easier. We'll also use our 7/16" wrench. So now what I'll do is I'll take this, go underneath, kind of hold it there, and I'm going to use this to tighten the process. Now, what I tell people to do when they're tightening this is what I like to feel, and I'll show this to you, is I like to see a little bit of thread past the nylon lock nut. So if you can see there, I'll use my hand and it's about 1 thread past. You want to make sure you do that because that will allow this nylon lock nut to lock the bolt in place so it cannot back out on you. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to repeat the process all the way around. Now that we've got everything assembled on the seat side, it's time to put on the covers. So what we'll do is we're going to fold up our seat. We're going to have it sitting like we normally would. And what I like to do is I like to start with the bottom cushion first. There's no real right or wrong way that you have to do it. It's just that's how I like to start it. And what I'm going to do from there is take these Velcro pieces, straps, just undo them. We're going to push these through the back like so, because they will wrap around the underside of the seat here once we get everything done. And in the front, you're going to have kind of a little slot for it to slide into the front of the seat. So I'm going to get it in there. It's kind of tricky to do. So you just kind of maneuver it and work it a little bit, but it will go in very easily. So once we got that, give it a little push, get it where I like it. Now I can attach the straps. So a quick trick to do here, don't do it while the seat system's sitting like this. Have everything parallel and straight with each other like it would be sitting down. So you're going to have a little bit of room to work with here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that strap is flat and not twisted. Go underneath, find your loop, and just simply tighten it down. Very easy process to do here. This is probably the easiest part about this entire seat system. And we'll just go back, do the same thing real quick. Find it here, just like so. Tighten it down. The bottom's done. Now we're going to repeat that same exact process for the back seat cushion. So from there, same deal, same process. Gonna slip it over the top here. Get it where we want it. I'm going to take my straps, pull them back behind me, and then what we will do from there is tighten them down. Don't need to go crazy on it, just enough to get it put in place. Now, one more reminder, now that we're finished up with the seat assembly process, I showed you one. Okay, and your next seat is going to be assembled the exact same way. So if you have any questions or thoughts of how to do it or can't remember something, just rewind the video here and go through the process again. It'll be the exact same way. So now that we're done with the seats, let's move on to the fish house. So like earlier, I had said to you that there was a extension pole that had a lime green zip tie on it. We did not want to cut it until this point right here. Well, now we're ready to do it. So we've got our regular hoop pole here. A good identifier of that is the small singular hole up here. This is where that collar is going to clip into place that we're going to use to attach this extension pole. So what we'll do is we'll put that off to the side and we'll get it going. So you should have your 2 collars. Your hardware will be included with those collars. So as you can see, there's just 2 screws, nuts and bolts. So they're all included with that in the package, so you don't need to look for those. Okay, and then when you will have your 2 extension poles. So we will get these off, get those set. This is a very simple process to do. And all right, so we got those set, we got those ready to rock and roll. Get the garbage out of there. This is very easy to do. First thing we're going to do is detach these. You're going to want a number 2 Phillips. I like using a drill for this. You can use a regular Phillips screwdriver. Just make sure that the head of it is a number 2. So what we're going to do is just take them out. You don't need a wrench. It is actually already molded in there for the nut itself, so that will lock it into place when you screw it back in. So we'll get these out. So these are out. Now what we'll do is we'll install it. So you want that molded side for the nut to be on the facing the inside of this, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna slide this into the pole, and we're gonna bring it all the way up to those holes that I had spoke about. And you're gonna hear this thing and see it clip into place. So we'll go back. There you go. That side's clipped into place. Now we'll repeat the process on the other side here real fast. We'll get that down on there. Spread it apart, get it up to where it needs to be. And those two clipped into place. Now we're ready to install the poles. So we've got two of these. What you want to make sure is you have a notched end and then you have a non-notched end. You want that notched end to be facing the inside of the pole system. So I'm going to make sure it's lined up facing the inside. I'm just going to set that in there. Just leave it there for the time being. I'm going to take my screw and my nut, and I'm going to just run the screw there through there first, so it just kind of keeps things in place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my drill, I'm going to insert the nut into the collar there, and I'm going to hold it with my finger. And I'm just going to slowly tighten it down. You don't want to go too tight with this, but you want just enough where it's in there. It's not sloppy, it's not flopping around, but it moves freely. Okay? We're going to repeat that same process for the other side here quick. So do the same. Make sure the notch side is facing inside. Lay that down, let it rest there. We'll get the screw inside, get it through. Put our nut inside there, tighten it down, and we are set and ready to go. Now, all we need to do is add the extension pole. So what you're going to want for this process is you're going to want 2 RPSX clips. Okay? And now we'll grab the extension pole. Remember, this has got that lime green zip tie that I talked about. This is your extension. Okay, I'm going to grab my clippers and we're just going to cut that out of there. We don't need this anymore. So once that's done, now I can add the RPSX clips. Real quick tip, what you want to do with these, you see the button in the inside, we want that to be out of there. You can close it with your hand as you put it on. What I actually like to do is take it, pull it out, and just turn the lever to the side. That will keep that free on the inside. That'll make it very easy. On the back side of this, you're going to have a tab, and you're going to have a little button, a little knob that sits right there. What's going to happen is when we go into the pole, we want this to go inside the pole, and it is going to clip into another hole that is in place. So I'll bring this down lower for you to see. So as you can see, we're putting it on, and then we get to that point where it hits there. I'm going to push down so it goes in, and then move it until that button reaches that hole and seats it in place. This will not be going anywhere anymore. So we're going to repeat that same process on the other side real fast. Once you have the RPSX clips installed onto the extension pole, we're going to leave these out, and you'll see why here in the next step. Now that we got the RPSX clips installed on the extension pole, let's take the extension hoop pole and let's connect it to our extension poles. So what we'll do is we'll leave these knobs out. We want to do that. That's going to make this whole process slide a lot easier. So what I like to do is start from one side. Just kind of get that fit in there. You don't need to go all the way down with it. And then I'll come to the other side here, and I will do the same. So now that those are in there, we can come right to the middle of the hoop pole here, and we can just kind of work it in. Just give it a little bit of love taps, because it may be off a little bit on how far you put in one side, but then after you get it set, everything goes in perfect. Now that we got that done, let's move on to the assembly to the house. We got the seats done, we got the extension done. Now it's time to move on to the base itself and the assembly of the frame. Before we get into putting this together, if you have a runner kit or any type of accessories, I would urge you to take care of that before you build the frame out on the house. It's going to make it a lot easier to do it. It's going to leave you a bunch of room, especially the runner kit. I think the runner kit is most vital for that, and having a free base to be able to do it, because you have to flip it and it's easier to get to the nuts and bolts and all that. So if you get everything set up and you get a tent put on, then you go to the runner kit, you're gonna have a much harder time doing it. So I would very much advise to take care of the runner kit and all of your accessories before you start to build the frame. Let's start building the frame here. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna work on the seat rail. Your hardware that you're gonna need for this is the nylon lock nuts, which are a 106-284. And then we will want to use our Allen bolts, which is a 106-286. These are the things that are gonna be needed. You're gonna need 2 of each, or you're gonna need 4 total of each, 2 for each side, and we will get started with that. So first thing I like to do is, I like to take for the next piece that I'm doing, I like to get my nuts and bolts out and I like to put them in the corners so I know what I need and I've got them right in front of me. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our rail support brackets. Now, these rail support brackets are gonna be mounted into these 2 holes on the side here. And what you wanna make sure of is that this part is facing up, okay? You don't want it to be mounted like this because that's not gonna work for you. This is where the rail is going to seat into. So we wanna make sure it's sitting up. So first thing I'll do is I just take both of them, I put them in the slots like that, all right? I hold on to them like a guitar or a piano, and I'll put them in, okay? And I will not start with the bottom one because if I do the bottom one, the front's gonna fall out. So I will start with the top and just get that hand tight. Now it's free to sit there. I don't have to worry about bolts falling out. And then we will do the same thing on the bottom. Now what I'm gonna do is I'll just move over to the other side and repeat that same exact process. All right, now that we got the rail brackets put on, we're gonna move to our next step, and that's adding the rail support. So the hardware we're gonna want for this is the 106-456. These are our Allen bolts. We're gonna want 2 of them, along with our lock nuts, which are the 106-284s. We're gonna want 2 of those as well. So we've got the hardware we need for that. Now we're gonna start the assembly of the rail support. Very simple. You're gonna have 2 rail support plugs. We're gonna put this on each side. Now note, when you look, there is a hole that sits in here, okay? You wanna make sure that the notch in that rail support plug goes and levels out with that hole. So we put it in, we just wanna make sure. And a way you can identify too is look through it and you're gonna still be able to see through it. So we're gonna do that for both sides. So I will add it into this one as well. Very quick and easy. Slap her in there. And then we're gonna lay the rail support into this. Now what I like to do is just let it sit free and we'll start from one side and work our way around to the other. So we're gonna want 1 of those Allen bolts and 1 of those lock nuts. And you wanna make sure that your Allen head side is facing forward. And if you don't know what I mean by facing forward on the tub, you'll have 3 holes right here. This will be the front of your tub. This is where the mounting brackets go into place. So you want that facing forward. So simply just slide it in there. I'll put the nut on, just kind of hand tight, just to leave it in place. Now we'll repeat that same process over here real quick. Now with this side, the reason I like to leave it loose is it gives you a little bit of leg room to move around with. So what I'll do now at this point, if it's off a little bit like this one is, I'll just take my hand and very easily push it in. Okay, and now that is into place. We can hand tighten that. Now I can go back for my other tools and we can tighten this down. So we got the rail support on. Now we're gonna move on to our full mounting brackets. So the hardware we're gonna want for this is a 106-286. We've been using these for a little while. And then we're also gonna want our lock nuts, the 106-284s. So this goes on pretty simple, pretty easy. You're gonna want 3 of your 106-286s. And what I'm simply gonna do is I'm gonna put these in like so. And I like to get them all in at once. That's something I like to do. Once again, hold it like a piano or a guitar. Set it all in there at once. Everything's sitting in place. Now I'm gonna grab 3 of my lock nuts. And once again, we're just gonna go hand tight. All right, once that's hand tight, we're gonna move on to the other side, do the same thing, and then once we get them both on, we'll tighten them down. So as we're tightening these down, one thing you wanna make sure of is that this bracket is straight. If you notice here, it's just a hair off. It has a little leg room to move. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stand back a little bit. I'm gonna line it up with the base of the tub, and I'm just going to adjust it to make sure it's straight. So once I know that it's straight, then I'll get everything locked down and tightened and ready to go. Now that we've got our mounting brackets put on, it's time to put on our poles. So first thing we're gonna start with is the bent porch poles, okay? And like I just discussed, we're gonna want our 106 331s for this. What we're gonna do is we can get those out. Okay, we've got our 6. And a reminder with the hardware is you will always have one extra in there, so don't get worried if you get done with this and you have a bunch of extra hardware. You will have one extra in every one of the packages. So what we'll do here now is I'll grab this. Now this has a notched end on each side. As you can see through it and see me. We don't have to really worry about how we're putting this one on. But what I do want to say is when we do put our Allen bolts on, we want to make sure the Allen head is facing the outside. This is where the tent will be rubbing. So the last thing we want is this bolt going through and having all that excess sitting out there for it to damage the tent. So you want to make sure it comes on the inside. So all we're simply doing at this point is getting them set. Okay, we'll get that one put in place, then we'll move on to the next one. Now this next one, I like to start at the back. It just makes it a lot easier when you're installing it. But like we had discussed earlier with the extension, there's a notched end and there is an end that isn't notched. We want to make sure that notched end is facing inside of the house. So check it before you go, look at that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slide it on the bottom one, let it rest up top there, and repeat that same exact process. Just slide the bolt through. And we'll do one more here real quick. Be the same exact way. Notched end facing inwards. Put it on. And that side is good. Now we're ready to lock it down with our lock nuts that are included, which is the same as what we have been using, the 106 284s. So I will grab 3 of those. We will get them hand tight. Okay, now that we got that done, we'll move on, do the next side, and we'll be ready for the next step. Once we've got everything tightened down, a little quick tip is what I like to do is I like to tighten them down to where they are stiff here, where they're not moving so much. You have to move them with your hands to get them to go. And now at this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna barely back them off. And the whole reason to this is I do not want this pole to be loose where it's sloppy and it's flopping around inside that bracket. I want it to stay tight, but I also want it to move free on its own. That's just gonna make it a lot easier in the setup process when you go to flip over to go fishing and then go at the end of the night. So what I'll do is I'll go in after it's tight and I'll keep this up like vertical at like a 45. You know, it really doesn't matter as long as it's up. And then I will loosen until I see that pole fall freely on its own. After it does that, then I know it's at the perfect tightness that it needs to be, and I know everything's gonna work good and move freely. So if you see there, that fell down, that one's good to go. And then I'll do that the same for the bottom. Just loosen it up till it moves on its own. That's good to go. Nothing's too loose, everything's tight, but it's still all free to move by its own. Now that we've got all of the canopy poles put on, our mounting brackets, our rail support, now it's time to add the hoop poles and finish our frame. So what we're gonna want for this is we're gonna wanna grab the rest of our RPSX clips, okay? That's gonna be very important for this job. What I like to do ahead of time too for a little tip is I actually will just take them and I'll open them all up really quick. It takes about 2 seconds to do and it makes the job just a little bit quicker. All right, so I've got them all done. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna move on over to the hoop poles. So first I'm gonna grab the hoop pole. We're gonna repeat that same process that we did with the extension. And we're gonna simply put it on. Okay, get it to the end, push that tab down, get it on the inside and listen for it to lock. That one's in place, it's not gonna go anywhere. We're gonna repeat that same exact process for all of our hoop pulls. Now it's time to put on our hoop pulls. Now the order of how we do this is very important because you're gonna want your extension in the correct place. So first we're gonna start off with one of our single hoops. Okay, we've got them both on, ready to rock and roll. So what I like to do is, if you're doing this by yourself, very simple, I actually take it and I will rest it into my forearm, into my armpit, and kind of rest it on my belly here. And this just makes it easier. I can hold it, I can get it into place. And what I'll do is I'll start with the bottom porch pull. I'll add that on there. I'll move to the other side and I'll repeat that same exact process. Okay, so we'll get that one in. And what I'll do is go from both sides. So kind of just push it a little bit. It depends on how you put it on. It might have went on crooked on one side. Everything's slid on there great. The next one that we want to put on is our extension. Okay, this is the one that we worked on at the beginning where it has the two poles connected into one. You want to make sure that extension right here is facing up. This will be your 45 that sits in front of your head on top of there. So we want to make sure that's facing up. We'll repeat that same exact process for this. What I'll do is I'll lay it down, put it in there, that one side in, and I'll work over to the other side like so. Get that one on there. We'll get to the center here and we'll just kind of work it on. Once we get it leveled out, it'll go on really easily. Okay, and then that process is done. Now, what I'm not gonna do is I'm not gonna put our final hoop pull on. This will be the hoop pull that sits on the floor. This will be your porch hoop. I'm not gonna put this on, and the reason I'm not gonna put this on yet is we're gonna wanna use this when we go to put the tent on. And I'm actually going to take off one of my RPSX collars and just put it inside the tub for now. So it easily just slides right off. I'll set that in for here. And when we move on to the tent, you'll see why I did that. All right, so we've got the frame ready to rock and roll. We're gonna get to the tent here in a second, but first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put on the rope. So you'll get a 9-foot rope with your Voyager. And really easily what you do is come from the outside, you'll see 2 holes down here. Okay, so all we're gonna do there at this point is I'm gonna put one end through and simply I'm just gonna tie a knot. So you don't need to go crazy, but leave some slack in there so it can move and stretch and do what it's gotta do. So I'll get that to there, and then all I'm gonna do is just give her a couple tugs to cinch her down. Then we're gonna repeat that same process right here. I'm gonna put it through that hole. I'm going to make a knot. Okay, tighten it down, pull it through, give it a good tight. So now the knots are nice and tight, they're not gonna come loose on you. And what I like to do afterwards is I just tie it up so it's out of the way when you do your tent. So just give her a nice little tie, it doesn't need to be crazy. So we've got that part of it done. So now the next thing to do is, you know, work on the tent. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my seats in there. We like to put our seats in for the simple fact that it's gonna add weight to the house. So when you are doing your tent, it's gonna give you a very good idea so the tub is not off a little bit. So we'll grab the other seat right here. And what I'm gonna do is there's a tab back here. This is what's gonna keep your seat attached to the seat rail. So I'm very simply gonna undo that. And all we're doing when we're putting them in is I'm going in the front, and you can tell the front is it does not have that retainer, that clip. Okay, so we're gonna slide that on like that. It's gonna hook around the edge of the tub, okay? And then it's gonna fall into place like that. So put it into place, sitting good. I'm gonna take a hanger, put it in there, tighten it down. Now it can't go anywhere. So that is how you do your seats. So I'm gonna get myself situated, and when we come back, we'll be ready to put on the tent. So we're ready to put our tent on, but the first thing we're gonna do before we put that tent on is we're gonna get our U-channel loosened up. So if you see here, the U-channel is very, very stiff right now. So think of this as a mouth guard if you've ever had to fit one. And what we want to do is we want to get this loose so it goes around the house easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 5 or a 6 gallon bucket. I'm going to fill this up with almost boiling water. I don't want it to be boiling because I don't want to burn myself, but I want it to be hot enough to where it's going to loosen this material up very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and I'm going to bend and twist and turn this thing, get it as tight as I can so I can put it down as low as I can in that bucket. So I'm going to get it down in that bucket. Now that it's in that bucket, I want to have my water in there. And for that time being, while we're getting the tent assembled on and ready to go, I'm just going to put this off to the side and let it warm up. We got the U-channel sitting there, soaking in the water, getting loose for us like we need it to be. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to assemble the tent onto the ice house. So the way I'm going to show you it today is a little bit different than what you may have been taught in the past. But to me, this is a lot more efficient for me to get it done. And it's a lot quicker too. You're not draping stuff over a house and doing all that stuff. So you'll see as we go through the process how simple it really is. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to pull it out. So as you can see, you'll see that on your sheet. Just to clarify, that's what you got. Pull this out. Don't need any of this anymore. So we'll toss that. So now the next step of what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be turning this tent inside out. To assemble it onto the fish house. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to open it up. But first thing I'm going to do before we do this is I'm going to go and I'm going to extend my poles. Okay. So first thing that I want to do here is I want to extend all the poles. So you're not going to have your top porch in. You're going to leave that out. That's what we're going to save because it has to actually loop through the tent itself. And then when I go to pull out the extension, I'm not going to pull out the actual extension. I'm just going to pull it all out together. This is going to make it a lot easier when you are doing it. And then once I get to that point where I get those Velcro attached onto this extension, then I will move this one out as well. But for now, we're going to keep it just like this. So moving back to the tent, I'm going to unfold the tent. So this is what you're going to see when you get one. It's going to unfold. Now we want to find the back of the house, okay? There's 2 ways to identify this. First things first, the easiest way to identify is the skirt, okay? So the front half of your house is going to have a skirt on it. Okay, it's going to look something like this. You're going to see the big difference. The back half of the house is not going to have a skirt, okay? So if you can see right there, that's the cutoff line. Okay, so this is your back half of the house. I know that because of this right here. So I'm going to unfold it. And if you still aren't sure or familiar, once you unfold it, spread it out. And what you're going to do is you're going to look for the license plate holder, okay, or 2 windows with the back door included. So I know that this is the rear of my shelter. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside, right where it's at. I'm going to grab it right about the license plate holder, and I'm going to unfold it. Okay, so now I'm pretty much putting it inside out, but what I'm doing is I'm at the back of the tent. Another way to identify when you do get it flipped inside out is look for the Clam logo on the inside, okay? This is what's going to be facing at the back of your head, and what's going to notify to you that this is the rear of the house, okay? And how we want to find the rear center of the house is all your Velcro, besides the center, is going to look similar to this. It's just one big strap. That's on all of them. The center rear is going to have 2 separate straps, like so. So I know that this is the rear center of the tent. So from that point on, what I'm going to simply do is I'm going to walk back to my house and we'll move on to that step. So I'm just going to ball it all up. I know that that's the rear. I'm going to walk it through. I'm going to advise you, if you can do it this way, if you have a long enough table, to definitely do this on a big table. It just makes it a lot easier when it's up at you. Otherwise, make sure you have a nice level ground. That's the biggest thing. Don't do it on your carpet if you don't need to. If you do, just be mindful of your adjustments. So just know that. But what I'm going to do is get that rear center. Okay, Clam logo. Like I said, it's going to be facing this way. So that's the rear center right here. And all I'm going to simply do is I'm going to attach. So I'll do the one. Now, when I'm doing this, I don't want it to get really tight. If you notice, I've got it very loose right here. I've got about a finger's room, maybe even 2. And you want this to be loose because these tents need to move with the house. So whatever you're doing, flipping, turning, the tent itself can't stay extremely tight, because if you do, you're going to start ripping stuff, because this is everything. This moves the tent around and allows it to fall in the place that it's supposed to. So just be mindful of that. So now I'm doing the second one. Like I said, I get 1 to 2 fingers in there. That gives me more than enough room for that thing to move around. So from that point on, we're going to follow straight across on the seam here. We're going to put this one on. Okay, that's on there. I'm going to follow back again to the other seam. Do the same thing, just fairly tight. Okay, so now I've got the bottom one on. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the second set. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to follow it down. Okay, until I run into the next one. Now, another way to know that it's the next one is this is your cargo net. Okay, your next strap is going to be just above that. So now that I know that's that, and I always start at the center of it. I don't like to go off to the sides, because that way if I'm starting at the center, then I know I can't grab any of the other Velcro that's around. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that same process through. All right, so now we're moved up to the extension part. So now what I'm going to do is do the same thing that I did. I'll follow it all the way down. Otherwise, what you can do is look for the last seam. So here we go. This is the final one. This is going to go on that extension. Same thing, just going to keep it loose. Don't want it to be tight. I want everything to flow how it should. Loose. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our porch pole and we're going to slide it through the tent. So what I like to do is I like to drape it over the top here. So you're going to have 2 different seams here, and that's what you want to follow. So another way you can identify one side is by all the tags on the tent, and then the other side is going to be very similar. They're going to be obviously be on each side of the front windows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, I'm just going to drape it over the top, and what I want is I want all these loops to be showing, because that's where we're going to drive it through. Okay, and you're also going to have one on the outer side. So got all that set like that. Now what I'm going to simply do is I've got one RPSX clip on still. We're not going to be attaching the other one yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on that far loop, okay? And I'm going to slide it through there. Get that started. And then all we're going to simply do is run it through. Now if you've got another person to do this with you, it makes it a lot easier, but you can also do it by yourself if you need to. So, just gonna slide it through. And as I'm doing that, I'm gonna pull the rest of it like that, the material. So, and all we have left is the one. So we're gonna this up like so. Slide that through there. Okay, now I'm just going to rest it over the top. I'm going to put this one in. So we're going to take her, put her in like so. I'm going to turn that clip, make sure it clips into place. And I'll take my final one and we're going to go in. Now remember, push that button in so it can go into place. Okay. Put it down, tighten it up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and I'm going to add the Velcro. So on each corner, there's Velcro straps for this porch pole. So I'm going to put those on really quick. Once again, we're not doing it tight. Okay, you're going to have a few more straps down the road. So we'll wait on that. We'll make sure these corners are on there. Got a little too far. There we go. Have these straps. Okay. So we got those 2 corner straps on. that in the corner. I'll push this forward a little bit. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna pull up a little bit of material. Just kind of get the thing loosened up. And now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out our extension. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pull that extension out. Okay, it's all clipped into place. And now what I'm ready to do is I'm ready to drape the tent over. So, all right, so now that we've got the tent on and ready to be flipped over, I'm gonna loosen all this up a little bit. So what I'm basically doing is I'm just taking stuff, okay, and I'm getting it ready. So I'm getting it loose on the tent. You can see I got a lot of slack up here. It's just gonna help it go over easy. Now, when you do this, this is something that you can definitely do by yourself. You don't need to do it with somebody else. What I would suggest when you're doing it is to maybe use like a rope or something, or come from the center when you do it. But if you have a second person, definitely have them come and help. It just makes the job a lot easier. So I've got my good friend Roberto here, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip this tent over and show you how easy this actually all falls into place. So we've got everything we need, we're ready to go, we're on the edge. Now what Berto and I are gonna do is we're gonna grab all the poles at once, okay? So on the count of 3, we're gonna go up and we're gonna get it completely vertical. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, we've got it all vertical. Now what we'll do is we'll start with the porch pole and let it fall down. And everything else is gonna fall right into place. And what you'll have to do a little bit is you'll have to move around, kind of get it a little bit set. And then what we're gonna do is I'll grab the back of this tent and I'm just gonna hold it like so. And I'm gonna take some type of a clamp. So here's what we use, little clamps just to put the tent there for the time being, okay? I'm gonna do that on the other side too. So just as long as you've got something similar to this that's gonna hold that tent in place, it's gonna work out perfect. And all we're doing is we're just trying to keep it set in a destination. So, yep, Berto's got one there. So from that point on, I'm gonna go over the tent, clean up anything that needs to get cleaned up. I'm also gonna start pulling pieces over, make sure everything's in place. I like to hit it a couple times in the front and the back. If there's any material that's kind of hung up, you can fix it that way. So as of right now, it looks pretty darn good. I can see that there's a little bit of slack I can take out of it yet. So I'll show you how to do that. And so what we'll do is we're looking at the front of the house. Okay. So I'm gonna go to each corner and I'm just gonna pull up on it a little bit. You see all that slack got taken out of there? And you only move this tent about 1 inch in the back, and it doesn't take much, okay? So I like it about right there. You wanna make sure that your seams are perfect with each other, okay? So you make sure it's in the center there, and you also do it on the other side here. And now if you notice, from us tightening that one side, we have a ton of slack in the back here. So I'm just gonna pull that out because I really don't need to lift it anymore. Pull that out and make sure it's all set. So now that we got that set, we're ready to go. When you're doing this, do not worry about how much material you have. If you look, that's the edge of the tub. I'm gonna have 3 to 4 inches. It doesn't matter. The more the better is what I say. But this way, you have the material you need to do. So do not worry about trying to get it so it's like this. You do not want it to be on the edge of it. More slack is better than none at all. So now that we've got that done, we can go through and we can put the U-channel on. So now we're ready to put on our U-channel. So we've got the tent set where we want it. We've got everything situated. We're ready to rock and roll. So a couple of ways to do this. One way that I do it is I use some type of an industrial stapler. And what this does is it's holding the tent in place for me so I don't have to move around with it much, but there's a few other ways you can do it. So if I was gonna do that, what I would simply do is I'd grab the tent, I'd pull it down so it gets somewhat tight, but I wouldn't get crazy with it because it will start lifting that front porch. So just get it to where it's like this, and then all I'll do is put one staple in there. That's just gonna hold that tent in place, and so I'll put one in and around and everything like that. But if you don't have that option, right here, I'm dropping things, what you can do is the screw method. So what I'll do is I'm gonna grab my U-channel, I've been letting it warm up in that water. It's ready to go. You can see now it's very pliable from where it was before. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna center it, okay, from end to end like so. I'm gonna follow it all the way to here. Okay, so this is my center. And I'm going to simply take that, and to hold this tent in place, I'm gonna do one screw, okay? So I'm gonna find that. One screw. Do not go crazy on this, because if you try to tighten it too much, it is going to push through the U-channel, okay? And don't worry about using every single screw in the package. So you've got the screws that are going through the U-channel, the tent, and the tub, so that tub is not gonna go anywhere. So now what I'm gonna do at this point is I'm gonna take my thumb. This is probably the hardest part for people, is doing the U-channel, and I'm gonna open it up like this. Basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open it up and just run it along. So get that tent kind of tight on there. And then I'm just gonna run it along, and you can kind of work it on there like so. When we get to the corners, that's where it gets fun. So I'm going to remove this. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my thumb and I'm gonna open it up completely like so. Okay, you're almost bending it backwards, and I'm just gonna basically wrap it around it. Okay? So now that I've got all that like so, and then as you're going, continue to tighten your tent down a little bit. So I'll go just above it, in front of it, and then put it all into place. Now, I'm gonna come back with my hands, and I'm gonna wrap around it, and especially in this corner, it likes to bulge out in the back side of it. I'll just take my hand and kind of mold it into the place. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna repeat that same process on the other side. When I come back, we'll put the screws in, we'll get this length cut to where it needs to be ready to go fishing. So now that we've got our U-channel all the way around, before we put the screws in, we're gonna figure out our length. So what we say is 8 inches from the back of the mounting bracket to the U-channel is where it should be, okay? So how you identify where the back of that mounting bracket is, you're gonna run along here until you feel it. So you're gonna feel the back side of that mounting bracket as you run your finger along. So right there's the back of it. Now how I measure it is by here. This is how I measure my bluegills. I know it's 8 inches. So what I'll do is, I'll find the back of that, put my pinky to it, and then right there, I know is 8 inches. And the reason that we say that is so it doesn't get hung up, and it gives it space to move. So all I'm gonna simply do is cut that like so, and then reattach. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, and then when we come back, let's get the screws in, be ready to go. We're gonna finish up the rest of our screws. And what I'm gonna do here is, you don't need to use every single one of them that come in the package. If you want to, go ahead, but it's not necessary. I like to go 6 to 10 inches. It depends on the fish house that I'm doing. You know, for the heavier, dutier ones, I'm gonna bring it down to 6. For the smaller, lighter ones, maybe 10 inches a piece. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come down the line here, find where I wanna go. So we'll say right here, okay? And let's slowly put it in. Now I'm not going too tight again on this. I'm just getting it in there, because I don't want it to go far, because I don't want it to puncture through the U-channel. So I'm gonna do that. We'll do one more right here. Okay, so I got those. Now what I'm gonna do is work on the corners, and to me, the corners are the most crucial part. Those are what takes more of the beating out of the entire tent itself. So I'm actually going to do one here, just before the turn. Okay, I'm gonna do one in the center. And also one right here. Okay, so now that I've got that, now I've got that corner taken care of. So I'm now gonna just do one more right here. Okay, and one at the end. Now don't get all the way to the edge of it. Give yourself a little bit of space and tighten that down. So, I mean, in reality, we've got about 6 screws in there. We don't have much, 6 to 7 screws. Doesn't take much. I'm gonna repeat that same process on the other side. We're gonna tear it down, be ready to go. All right, U-channel's on. Now we're ready to tear this down. Now, you do have additional Velcro on the inside of this house. So what you'll wanna do is, you'll wanna attach that. So you're gonna see it. You're gonna have one for each pole, okay? Right here, and then right here. make sure that you do the same thing. Just keep a finger or two of a gap in there because you want that to be loose, especially these ones too. These are the ones that are sliding up and down, so they need the most free motion that they can get out of it. So what we're gonna do now at this point to tear it down is we're gonna go inside. We're gonna start from the back, and then we'll work our way to the front and take it down and then pack it up and be ready to go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna come on the inside. You're gonna have each one of your RPSS clips. So we're gonna go to each side here. We're gonna grab, push in on the RPSS clip and let it slide down. Okay, so we got one. Now when you do the center one, do that one first and follow it like suit, working your way to the front. Okay, so we're gonna do the extension now. That's gonna fall right down like so. We'll push it back, and then our final one, it's right there. So we've got this done now. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go around, I'm gonna put all the material in on the inside. So when we go to take off for the day, there's nothing dragging, moving around. Okay, so I'm just gonna go around, just pack everything in nice and neat. If you have a travel cover at this point, then you could throw that travel cover on and you'd be ready to rock and roll for the day. So we've assembled the house, we've put the tent on, we've got everything that you need to get you going for the season. You're ready to go fishing. This is Mike Rates with Clam Outdoors. We'll see you on the ice.